Hello and welcome to another episode of Momento Malum. Today, the most prominent crop species grown in Canada are corn, soybean, and wheat. To make these crops the chief crops in Canada, extensive breeding has been done. This episode will cover the lineage of the cultivars grown in Canada. On a genetic level, the variation of these major crops is gradually eroding away. While the genetic erosion of Canadian corn is not fully known, the practice of creating inbred lines in naturally cross-pollinating species and the use of double haploid systems are well known for reducing the species' gene pool size. In Canadian wheat, 44% of the genetic variability has been lost. In soybean, on the other hand, the gene pool is gradually increasing in size through the introduction of new genetic lines. This episode will cover the pedigree of corn, soybean, and wheat, starting with corn. Corn is bred by making inbred lines and crossbreeding these inbred lines to create F1 hybrids. Since an F1 hybrid population are all siblings of two very inbred lines, once a population produces seeds, the resulting progeny of these seeds will be a shadow of their predecessors, as inbreeding takes its toll. This effectively makes an F1 hybrid an inbuilt patent, as you're unable to recreate the F1 hybrid without the original inbred lines. F1 hybrids are also genetically uniform, much like an inbred line, but have the vigor of an open pollinated line. Both aspects increasing the yield potential and vigor of the resulting F1 hybrid. This is why F1 hybrids are so popular with farmers, as well as companies, and why these lines are made. New variation is made by drawing forth from the original open pollinated lines, creating synthetic lines by mixing inbred lines, F1 hybrids, and open pollinated lines together, or by creating inbred lines from F1 hybrids. Dr. Reed would analyze 129 hybrids and open pollinated lines for the creation of F1 hybrids. 119 of them would be AAFC lines, and the rest would be of miscellaneous origin. These lines were analyzed using SSR genetic marker technology. It was found that of the 129 lines, 94 were derived from 8 genetic sources. 18 of these lines were derived from the Iowa stiff-stalk synthetic. 19 were derived from the European Flint open-pollinated cultivar. 15 were derived from another open-pollinated cultivar called Lancaster. 7 were derived from another open-pollinated line called Minnesota 13. 7 were derived from the open-pollinated cultivar Early Butler. 4 lines were derived from the open-pollinated cultivar Iodent. 11 lines were derived from the Pioneer 3990 F1 hybrid. 13 lines were derived from Pioneer 3994 F1 hybrid. And the remaining 35 lines were derived from new and exotic germplasm. All the lines and their lineage can be seen on the next few slides. In terms of the pedigree of wheat breeding in Canada began in 1886, with the goal of decreasing the time to maturity and improve the adaptation and quality of the early introductions, such as Red Fife. This breeding effort had produced many early maturing cultivars, such as Stanley, Preston, Huron, and Percy by 1901. The continuous selection and hybridization generated a high-quality and productive cultivar called Marquise in 1909. This became the primary cultivar in Canada for 2 decades. The stem rust epidemics of 1928 and 1935 resulted in a breeding program focused on breeding for stem rust resistance. This resulted in several high-yielding cultivars with rust resistance being bred by 1940. Due to the continuous evolution of this pathogen, breeding for stem rust resistance was shifted to develop multi-strain resistant cultivars. Over the course of this history, from the early 20th century to 2004, different populations would be bred for this purpose. These were a population derived from the Marquise cultivar, a population derived from the Thatcher cultivar, and a population derived from the Neepawa cultivar. The Marquise family, which are a legion of cultivars derived from Marquise, would begin in 1909 and would continue until 1929. This family would be superseded by the Thatcher family, Thatcher being a Marquise derivative. This new lineage would begin in 1935 before being superseded by the Neepawa family that began in the 70s. This cultivar is derived from Thatcher. Each iteration created a new founder that has led to a new genetic bottleneck and a reduced gene pool. On the Durum wheat pedigree end, Vernal, Emmer, Middum, and Haiti are the most prominent cultivars used in breeding until the end of the 20th century. For winter wheat, the founder cultivars are Turkey Red, Red 5, Hard Red Calcutta, Cow Vale, Purple Straw, and Mediterranean, with minor traces of pedigree from other cultivars. If you want to donate to my channel, the links are below. If you want to buy my book, you can also find that link in the description box below. In Canadian soybeans, there's been a continuous effort to maintain a broad gene pool. The primordial soybeans in Canada were forage only, but the discovery of a few deneutral lines of soybean will allow for commercial production in Canada. During the period between 1971 to the year 2000, many cultivars were released. These can be seen on screen. The foundational cultivars for this population were Mandarin, AK Harrow, Mukden, Richland, Flambeau, 052-903, Lincoln, Amsoy, and Protage. Most of the cultivars stem from these lineages, and there's been a great deal of backcrossing and crossbreeding between hybrids, born from the mingling of these lines. This was discovered through the work of Dr. Cober of the AAFC. The more recent creations have been covered by a series of papers by Dr. Ratschan. Soybean breeding in Canada first began in the OAC, or Ontario Agricultural College, the institution that would later become the University of Guelph. This began with the release of the 1925 soybean cultivar called OAC 211. This was bred by Professor Charles Zavitz from Haberot. As a result, Ontario became a major player in soybean production. Of the modern cultivars, the Canadian soybean gene pool are founded by the cultivars Mandarin, Richland, AK Harrow, Mukden, Allelic, Dunfield CNS number 171, and PI 54610. The major breeding programs in Ontario are based in the University of Guelph and Richtown campus. Both are institutions of great importance. The former program will be covered by The former is currently run by Dr. Ratschan, and the latter is run by Dr. Eskandari. Both will work together to analyze the genetic diversity in both groups. This includes 43 historical cultivars, 69 University of Guelph cultivars, 53 experimental lines from the University of Guelph, 50 Richtown cultivars, 33 Richtown experimental lines, and 8 hybrid lines between domesticated soybean and wild soybean. Also included are 10 hybrids between Chinese and Canadian cultivars, as well as 2 wild soybeans, and 20 cultivars that can be counted as miscellaneous. The research found that there was a great overlap in the pedigree of both the Guelph and Richtown cultivars. The founder population that was dated between 1907 and 1949 was found to be the most genetically diverse of the populations. The lowest period of genetic diversity was found in the cultivars bred between 1950 and 1979, as well as 1990 to 1999. The second most genetically diverse population were the cultivars bred between 1980 and 1989, and the third most genetically diverse population are the cultivars bred between 2000 and 2016. The genetic trends of the Ontario lines post-2010 shows an increase in the gene pool overall. This is despite the fact that the modern cultivar OEC Bayfield is used as a new founder cultivar. The pedigree of this cultivar will be fully covered in a later video, but for now we'll end this episode. Thank you for watching.